You broke down completely and nobody noticed. You stopped eating properly. Nobody noticed. You stopped sleeping. Nobody noticed. You stopped replying to messages. It took 3 days for someone to ask why. You cried every morning in the shower. Nobody heard. You screamed internally every single day. Nobody listened. Because you broke silently, and silent suffering is invisible suffering. This is Thiago's story. 36 years old, corporate executive, perfect life on paper, life collapsing in reality. He fell apart for 8 months, in plain sight, and nobody saw because he didn't make a sound. He didn't ask for help. He didn't seem depressed. He simply disappeared while he was still there. This is about silent collapse, about suffering that doesn't scream, about people drowning when everyone thinks they're swimming. Did you break down silently? This is for you, before you completely disappear. If you're falling apart and no one notices, sign up now. Here we talk about mental health without romanticizing it or lying to you. Thiago's story can show you that you're not alone in this silence. Thiago didn't wake up one day and decide to collapse. It wasn't a choice. It was accumulated. Years of pressure, demanding work, impossible expectations, family depending on him, distant wife, young children in need. And Thiago endured, always endured, until the day he couldn't take it anymore. But it wasn't dramatic. There was no panic attack in a meeting, no public breakdown. It was silent. It started small. Thiago stopped tasting his food. He ate, but it was mechanical, without pleasure, without registration, just fuel because his body needed to function, so he forced himself. But the food turned to ash in his mouth, tasteless, lifeless, and nobody noticed because he was still eating, at the right meals, with his family, functioning. And function is what people see, not the feelings behind it. Then, sleep was gone. Thiago would go to bed at 11 p.m. He'd stare at the ceiling until 3 a.m., his mind racing, an endless list of things to do, worries, fears, anxieties. And when he finally fell asleep, he'd wake up at 5 a.m., sweaty, heart racing, vague nightmares that he couldn't remember, but the feeling remained, a nameless terror. He'd get up, take a shower, have coffee, go to work, with only 4 hours of sleep, every day, for weeks. And nobody noticed, because he was there, on time, functional. And dark circles under his eyes? Are you tired? Yes, tough project. And that was it. Explanation accepted, because it was convenient to accept, easier than investigating. Thiago started losing weight, 5 kilos, then 8, clothes getting loose. You've lost weight, colleagues would say, in a tone of praise, not concern. Diet? Something like that. A lie. It was depression eating him inside, but nobody wanted to hear that, so he lied, and everyone believed him, because reality was uncomfortable and lies were easy. Thiago stopped replying to messages. Not all of them, the personal ones. Friends would send them, he'd see them and not reply for days, sometimes weeks. Hey, long time no see. Sorry, crazy work. Always work, a universal excuse that nobody questioned because everyone was crazy with work, so it made sense, and Thiago used it, a perfect shield that kept everyone away without seeming like he was keeping them away. Just busy, always busy, and too busy to reply, too busy to meet, too busy to exist. But what was the truth? Thiago was too empty, not occupied, empty. He didn't have the energy for social interactions, to pretend he was okay, so he avoided them, silently. And everyone understood, work really sucks, and they left it alone. And Thiago sank, deeper and deeper, in silence, so silent that no one heard, because silence makes no sound, and without sound there is no alarm, and without an alarm no one comes. And Thiago knew this, but he didn't know how to change, because asking for help out loud seemed impossible when you've spent your whole life being strong, silently strong, and breaking down out loud, that was admitting weakness, and weakness wasn't allowed. It never was. So he broke in the only way he knew how, silently, completely, deafeningly, invisibly. Thiago had a meeting with his boss, annual performance review. Boss, you've been meeting deadlines, but you seem distant. Is something wrong? A unique opportunity to tell the truth. I'm not feeling well. I think I'm depressed. He could have said it. He should have said it. But he said, no, everything's fine. Just tired. And the boss accepted it. Okay, take a few days off. And he moved on, because he didn't want complications. He wanted a functional employee, and Thiago was still functioning, so it was okay. His wife also asked, once, you seem different. Thiago, work stress? She, you need to rest, and went back to her phone. Conversation ended, because she didn't want to delve deeper either. Not out of malice, but out of her own exhaustion. Everyone was tired. Everyone had problems. And Thiago? Thiago seemed to be coping, so it wasn't urgent. And what isn't urgent waits and waits and waits until it becomes critical. And when does it become critical? Sometimes it's too late. Thiago was in critical condition for months, but nobody saw it because a silent critic seems stable until they implode. And implosion is also silent. It doesn't explode. It just fades away.
Until it disappears. And Thiago was disappearing, one day at a time, one piece at a time, and nobody noticed because he was still there, physically. And physicality is what counts, right? Wrong. But nobody knew. 6 months after symptoms began, Thiago had a day when he barely woke up, not because he was sleeping, but because he saw no reason to get up. For the first time in 36 years, the thought came clearly, what if I just don't get up and stay here forever? And for 5 minutes he considered it, seriously, not getting up, not going to work, not functioning, just stopping. But then the sound of children waking up, and responsibility pulled in, as it always did. He got up, automatically, took a shower, got dressed, went to work, like a zombie, without being present, just there, body there, mind absent. And nobody noticed the difference, because the difference was internal, and internal is invisible. Morning meeting. Thiago was sitting. People were talking. He heard words, but he didn't process them. It was noise, meaningless. Someone asked, Thiago, what do you think? Silence. He hadn't heard. Sorry, could you repeat that? Are you okay? Yes, I just got distracted. Lie number 847. He wasn't distracted. He was absent, completely disconnected. But nobody insisted, because insisting is uncomfortable, and everyone wanted comfort. Thiago began having frightening thoughts, driving to work. Thought, what if I just don't turn the steering wheel on the curve? Not a technical suicidal thought, but a thought of non-resistance. What if I let it happen, whatever it is? And that terrified him, because Thiago wasn't suicidal. He never was, but he was so exhausted from existing that the idea of not existing didn't seem so bad. It seemed like rest, and he knew this wasn't normal. He knew he needed help, but how could he ask? How could he say, I'm thinking about not resisting life, but I don't want to die. I just wanted to stop hurting, to stop being heavy, to stop being a responsibility. He had no words, so he stayed quiet, and the thoughts grew, not in intensity, but in frequency. Every day, several times a day. What if I just don't? And every time the thought came, Thiago fought it. He turned the steering wheel. He made the decision to live. But the fight was becoming exhausting, and he didn't know how long he could fight alone, without anyone knowing he was at war. A silent war, but a war nonetheless. Thiago stopped leaving the house unless absolutely necessary. Work, home, home, work. Weekend, bed. Excuse to the family, I need to rest. And he would stay there, staring at the ceiling for hours, without sleeping, without doing anything, just minimally existing. And the family accepted it. He works too much. He deserves rest. But it wasn't rest. It was paralysis, an inability to do anything beyond basic obligations, and obligations fulfilled automatically, without presence, without life, just function. Daughter's birthday, party at home. Thiago there, smiling in photos, but inside, empty, watching his daughter blow out candles and feeling nothing. And that broke him more than anything, because he loved his daughter, but he couldn't feel it. Love had become a concept, not a feeling, and that was terrifying, because it meant he was further away than he thought, that depression had eaten away not only joy, but the ability to feel anything. And you can be alive and dead inside, and nobody knows, because you still smile in photos. His wife finally realized something, not everything, but something. You don't touch me anymore. Thiago looked. It was true. He hadn't touched her for weeks. No desire, no connection, nothing. Sorry, I'm tired. Always tired, she said, a tone of frustration, not concern. And Thiago understood. She was frustrated with the symptom, not concerned with the cause, because the cause would require a difficult conversation, and everyone was avoiding it, including him. You should see a doctor. It could be hormonal. A doctor's suggestion, because a doctor is an easy solution. The pill is an easy solution. Real conversation, difficult, so avoid it. Thiago went to the doctor. Complete checkup, tests, results. Everything is physically normal, but you seem exhausted. Have you thought about therapy? The first person to suggest it in 8 months, and Thiago almost cried, because finally someone saw it. Not everything, but something, and something was already more than nothing. Thiago made an appointment with a therapist, but it took him 3 weeks to go, because admitting he needed one was the last step, and the last step is always the hardest, because it's where you admit, I'm not okay, out loud, and saying it out loud is real, and real is scary. So he postponed it, and he almost didn't go. But it happened, because the alternative was to keep disappearing, and he was tired of being a ghost in his own life, tired of being there and not being there, tired of no one noticing, or of noticing and not caring. He was tired of everything, and therapy was a last resort before giving up completely, not necessarily on living, but on trying to be present in life. The therapist listened to Thiago, everything. 8 months poured out in 1 hour, and at the end he said, you have depression, severe depression, and there's something else, you have high-functioning depression. Thiago didn't know the term.
What is that? It's when you're depressed, severely, but you still function. Work, family, responsibilities, you fulfill them, but inside, you're dying. And nobody sees it because you don't look depressed. You look tired, stressed, but functional. And functional is invisible because it doesn't worry anyone. Thiago cried for the first time in months because someone had named what he was feeling without knowing how to name it. Functional depression. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't weak. He was sick. And an illness has a name, and a name validates it. And Thiago needed validation desperately because he spent 8 months thinking he was weak, that he was exaggerating, that everyone went through this and endured it, so he should endure it too. But no, not everyone, not like that. This had a name, and treatment, and hope. The therapist explained the research. Studies show
People with functional depression suffer longer before seeking help. Why? Because they don't fit the stereotype of a depressed person. They go to work, they smile, they interact, so nobody believes they're unwell, not even themselves. I can't be depressed. Depressed people can't function, and I function. But you can function and be depressed, and functioning makes you invisible, and being invisible kills because nobody helps what they can't see. Thiago fit the description perfectly. He had all the classic symptoms: lack of pleasure, insomnia, weight loss, intrusive thoughts, emotional disconnection. But he also had a stable job, a family, and fulfilled responsibilities. And the second list canceled out the first in everyone's eyes. He's fine. Look, he's working. But working isn't the same as being well. It's about being functional, and being functional can mean dying. It just dies slowly, silently, without alarm. Studies also show that men are 3 times more likely to have silent depression. Why? Because men are socialized not to show it. Men don't cry. Men endure. Men solve problems. And Thiago had been trained in this since childhood. Boy crying? Stop being a drama queen. Boy scared? Be a man. And Thiago learned to feel, but not to show it. And not showing it becomes not speaking. And not speaking becomes not processing. And not processing becomes accumulation. And accumulation becomes a bomb that eventually explodes or implodes. And Thiago was imploding for months in silence because showing it was weakness, and weakness was unacceptable. Researchers also discovered that functional depression has a higher suicide rate than classic depression. Counterintuitive, but it makes sense. Because a person with classic depression can't hide it, so they receive help, forced help, hospitalization, medication, a support network. But a person with functional depression, they hide it well, so nobody helps, and they suffer, alone, for years, until they can't take it anymore. And when they decide to act, they have the energy to do it. Unlike classic depression, where they lack the energy even for that, and this makes functional depression more lethal, statistically. And Thiago was in that statistic, and he didn't know it. The therapist asked, "Why didn't you ask for help sooner?" Thiago thought, "Because I didn't think it was serious enough." How so? People with real depression can't get out of bed. I could. I worked, so it couldn't be that bad. And there it was, the myth, the one that almost killed Thiago. The myth that depression has a face, that it has visible symptoms, that it has expected behavior, and if you don't exhibit symptoms, you don't have the illness. But no, depression is a spectrum, and functional depression is part of it, and functional depression kills because it's invisible, and invisible depression is neglected by everyone, including yourself. You spent 8 months suffering because you didn't allow yourself to be unwell, because you were still functioning. But functioning isn't living, it's surviving. And survival isn't a goal, it's a temporary state until you can live again. But you were stuck in survival mode for 8 months, and you almost didn't come back, because survival is exhausting, and eventually you stop wanting to survive, and you just stop. Thiago cried more, because it was true, exact, brutal, and finally told. And truth, even painful truth, is liberating, because at least it's real, and reality can be treated. Lies can't. And Thiago had lived a lie for 8 months, a lie that he was okay, because it worked. But a lie had almost killed him. And now he was going to live the truth, even if it hurt, even if it scared him, because truth was his only chance to return, to be more than just a role, to be a person, to feel, to live again. 3 months after starting therapy and medication, Thiago was different. Not cured, but present. He felt, not everything, but something. Food tasted good, not always, but sometimes. Sleep came, with the help of medication, but it came. And for the first time in almost a year, Thiago wasn't thinking, what is I just don't? He was thinking, maybe tomorrow will be okay. And maybe that was enough. When you've spent months without any hope, maybe is revolution. His wife noticed, you're more here. Thiago, I'm trying. What changed? And Thiago did something he never did. He told the truth. I was depressed for almost a year, and I almost didn't survive. Silence. She didn't know what to say. I didn't know. I know.
Nobody knew, because I didn't say, and because nobody really asked. It wasn't an accusation, it was an observation. And she listened. She really listened. And for the first time, she asked, "How are you now?" "Better. Not well, but better." And she held his hand. "I'm sorry I didn't see. I hid it well. Even so." And there, for the first time in years, a connection. Real, vulnerable, human. And that helped, more than any medication. Thiago also told his friends, not all of them, but some. A college friend called. "Dude, I need to tell you something." And he told him everything. 8 months, functional depression, intrusive thoughts, silent breakdown. His friend listened, and at the end, "Damn, I had no idea." Nobody did. "But like, you seemed okay." "I know, I was functioning, but I wasn't okay." My friend stayed quiet, processing, and then, "Me too." "Thiago, you too what?" "Me too. I'm not okay. For months. But I didn't know I could talk, because everyone seems fine, so I pretend too." And there, 2 people, pretending for everyone, including each other. And when one was finally real, the other could be too. They talked for 2 hours about silent collapses, about functioning while dying, about no one seeing, about not knowing how to ask for help. And in the end, friend, thank you for talking, because now I know I can too. And Thiago cried, because he had thought he was unique, but he wasn't. He was surrounded by people suffering in silence, pretending well, and when one took off their mask, another could. And that saved 2, not 1, 2, because vulnerability is contagious, just like strength. And Thiago had been vulnerable, and that gave strength to his friend, and strength returned to Thiago, and the vicious cycle turned virtuous, finally. Thiago went back to the doctor, the one who had suggested therapy. He told him everything, diagnosis, treatment, improvement. The doctor listened and said, "I see this every day. Functional people, but dying inside. And they take years to ask for help because they don't allow themselves to be unwell while they can still function. Why do we do this? Society. Society values productivity over well-being. So you learn, if you produce, you are valuable. If you stop producing, you are disposable. So you produce, even while dying, because producing is surviving. But that's not life. It's a slow death, socially accepted, even applauded. Look how dedicated he is. No, look how he's dying, and nobody cares enough to stop him." Thiago felt it deeply because it was accurate. He had been applauded for enduring, for functioning, for not complaining, and the applause kept him trapped in the role of strong. And strong people can't break, so he broke, silently, to keep the applause, but he almost died in the process. And now he didn't want applause, he wanted to live, and living sometimes meant not functioning, and being okay with that. A year after starting treatment, Thiago was in a place he never imagined, not cured. Depression has no cure, it has treatment, management, highs and lows. And Thiago still had lows, days he didn't want to get up, days food tasted like gray, days thoughts returned. But what difference did it make? He no longer hid it. His wife knew. Today is not a good day. She, what do you need? Connection, real connection. His children knew too. Adapted version. Daddy gets sad sometimes, and that's okay. Everyone gets sad sometimes. And his 6-year-old daughter, I get sad sometimes too. And what do you do? I talk to you. Then you can always talk to me too, even when I'm sad, okay?
"Okay, Daddy." And that was it. That was healing. Not from depression, but from silence. Thiago was no longer suffering alone, and that made all the difference. All the difference. He also became an advocate for men's mental health. He spoke openly, in posts, in conversations. Men break down too, and that's okay. Some friends disappeared, uncomfortable, but others appeared. "Dude, thanks for talking. Me too." And Thiago listened, and connected, and created a network of men who weren't okay, but who were no longer alone. And the network saved lives, one at a time. Because when you see that you're not alone, shame diminishes. And when shame diminishes, you can ask for help. And help saves lives. It always has, but it needs to be asked for, and asked for aloud. And aloud only comes when you know you won't be judged. And Thiago created space, without judgment, where men could be vulnerable, and human, and broken, and still valuable. Because value doesn't come from function, it comes from existence, and existence is enough. It always has been. Thiago was proving it, to himself, and to others, one day at a time. Emotional safety warning. If you're thinking of giving up because no one notices you're suffering, call 1-888-CVV. Your silence doesn't mean you don't matter. It means you need help to make some noise. Let's name what Thiago experienced. Functional depression. You suffer severely, but you still function. And functioning makes suffering invisible. And invisible suffering is neglected by everyone, including yourself. I can't be depressed. Depressed people don't work, and I work. But working isn't about being well, it's about being functional. And functionality may be dying. It just dies slowly, silently, without alarm. And without alarm, no one comes. Thiago almost died, not through a conscious act, but from the exhaustion of existence.
And nobody saw it for 8 months because he didn't make a sound. And sound is what triggers help. Silence? Silence is ignored, even when he's screaming, because an internal scream has no sound, and society doesn't respond to what it doesn't listen to. Science proves it. Functional depression exists, and it kills. Suicide rate higher than classic depression because it's invisible and neglected. Men are 3 times more likely because they are socialized not to show it. And not demonstrating becomes not prosecuting, and not prosecuting becomes a bomb, and a bomb explodes or implodes. And Thiago imploded for 8 months until almost nothing was left. But he asked for help at the last minute, literally, and help arrived. Therapy, medication, support network, and he came back, not cured, but alive, present, feeling. And it's worth it. It's worth all the effort. It's worth all the vulnerability. It's worth all the discomfort of admitting I'm not okay. Even though I'm functioning, I'm not okay. Here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. You can completely fall apart and nobody will notice if you do it quietly. And this isn't about blaming the people around you. It's about recognizing silence is invisible, and invisible is ignored. Not out of malice, but out of ignorance. People don't know what they don't see, and you don't show them, so they don't know. And the more you hide, the more they assume everything is fine. And the more they assume, the less they ask. And the less they ask, the more you hide. A vicious cycle that almost killed Thiago. And it might be killing you right now. As you read this, it's working, but it's dying. And if it's true, do what Thiago did. Break the silence. Tell one person, I'm not okay. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be detailed. Just, I'm not okay. And look what happens. Maybe nothing, maybe everything, but you tried. And trying is the first step to come back, to live, to be more than just a function, to be a person who feels, who suffers, who needs, and who deserves help, even while functioning, especially when functioning. Because functioning while dying isn't strength, it's tragedy.
And you deserve more than tragedy. You deserve life, real, felt, alive. Thiago's life today doesn't impress anyone from the outside. Same job, same family, same routine. But internally, a different world. He feels it, not always, but sometimes. And sometimes it feels endless when you've spent a year with nothing. He laughs, not forced, real. He cries, not just alone, but with his wife, with friends. He speaks, today is not a good day, and that's okay. It's not failure, it's honesty. And honesty saved him. It's saving others, and it can save you. If you allow it, if you speak up, if you break the silence, even if you're afraid, even if you think it's not serious enough. It is. It always is. If you're suffering, it's serious. It doesn't matter if it works. It doesn't matter if nobody notices. You notice, and that's enough. To ask for help, to break the silence, to live again. Finally, if you're falling apart in silence, do one thing today. Tell one person. It could be a therapist, a friend, a family member, a doctor. Just one person. I'm not okay. 3 words. And then come back here and say, I told you. Because seeing others talk about it will give you courage. Subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about mental health without romanticizing it and without lying to you. Ring the bell. Stay with us, because you are not alone. Even if you feel like it, even if no one notices, you are not. And falling apart in silence doesn't have to be your story. It can be the beginning of making noise, of asking for help, of living, finally. And you deserve it. You always have.